Distant Worlds 2, a galactic 4X strategy game with serious detail, but should you buy it right now? This video will answer all of your questions, starting with a 60-second too long didn't read overview of the game, so you can tap out early if it doesn't appeal to you. Then we'll see what it's like to actually play it by examining the gameplay loop and mechanics before looking at some practical considerations and the different types of players this game might appeal to, all to help you decide whether this game is worth your time and money today. In Distant Worlds 2, there are a mind-boggling number of features and mechanics for you to play with, and yet you have the option to completely automate everything, with you picking and choosing exactly which elements of the game you want control of, from whole areas like exploration or diplomacy, right down to individual ships and a percentage point increase in tax policy of a particular colony. The gameplay loop is a familiar story to grand strategy fans. You expand across the galaxy, colonizing planets, negotiating with and fighting other factions as you set up mining operations with an autonomous private sector, transporting the goods to where they're needed as you research an insanely large tech tree with the option of spending hours designing ships. The game has less species creation, endgame, and story options than Stellaris, but is otherwise more detailed and flexible. So if you like the sound of galactic domination with complete control over what you do and how you play with a focus on logistics, Distant Worlds 2 might be your cup of tea. If that hasn't put you off, then grab a drink and get comfortable as we look through the detail of what you actually do in Distant Worlds 2. When you set up a game, you have a plethora of options, starting with the size and shape of the galaxy, including nebula density, which can damage or disrupt your ships. You can adjust starting tech levels for yourself and other empires, including whether you can see the full tech tree from the beginning, or if it's hidden and somewhat randomized. Along with the other empires, you can adjust the number and hostility of space creatures and pirates that you will encounter, as well as the number of potential and independent colonies in the galaxy, before finally looking at your own race and government type. There are 7 races and 8 government types to choose from in the base game, with more included in paid-for DLCs. Those who are used to Stellaris will find the lack of customization over your own race one of the most disappointing omissions from Distant Worlds 2. How to win each game can depend on how much of the galaxy's territory and population you control, as well as the size of your economy and then special conditions that apply to each race. For example, humans want to control continental colonies and having the most defense treaties in the game. Exactly how much of each of these elements you require to win is entirely up to you in the game setup. In my opinion, sandbox mode can be rather fun without the pressure of competing and just taking your time to slowly nurture and expand your empire. So you've started your game. What now? It depends on how you chose to start the game, but assuming you have one colony and your people have only just launched ships into space for the first time, you might build a space station around your planet and an exploration ship to explore your local moons for resources. You'll want to research a skip drive so you can retrofit your ships with an engine they can use to explore the other planets in your solar system, then eventually research faster-than-light tech to explore other solar systems. If you start right at the beginning, jumping to another solar system becomes a big moment in this game, but you can get there quickly if you know what to do and run the game at 8 times speed. You'll also want to start mining resources as soon as possible. There are many different resources in this game, but they are broken down into broadly 3 types. There's fuel. Yes, your ships need to refuel, have limited range, and if they run out of fuel, go super slow. But there's only one type of fuel, so that's easy. Then there are a whole bunch of different construction resources, which are obviously used for construction, but also for initiating research projects. And you'll want all of these construction resources relatively early in the game. Then finally, you have another whole bunch of resources classed as luxury resources, which basically keep your people happy, boosting the development of your colonies, generating more money for your economy as a result. Something that differentiates Distant Worlds 2 from other similar games is the fact there are 2 economies: the state economy, which you control, and the private economy, which you do not control, but you can and must influence. To showcase how this actually works, let me take you through an example of the movement of money, which at the same time will explain a bunch of other concepts. Each colony has a revenue figure that is constantly changing. This figure is broadly based on the size of that colony's population and multiplied by the development percentage. The revenue is not yours. It belongs to the private economy. That revenue is reduced by a corruption percentage. Corruption is increased if the population is too high, or the tax rate is too high, or general instability. What's left after corruption can be taxed at a tax rate of your choosing. Then reduced by support costs. Support costs can increase with a really low population, an atmosphere that's less suitable for that species, that sort of thing. The tax left over, once your support costs have been deducted, is your income. And it is very easy for this figure to be negative. So add up all of your colonies, and ideally the end number is positive. Then we go to a different screen, where you can decide what to do with that money. You can set a percentage reserve, which basically adds money to your bank pot. Then you can tell the AI how much it's allowed to spend on building ships, troops, and facilities if you've automated building them. Then, if there's any left over, you can add a percentage towards increasing colony growth or research speed. Then, if there's any unused excess, that will also go back into your pot. There are way more factors to each of these steps than I'm describing, but I'm trying to keep this high level. But a huge part of this game is boosting these figures, as any excess can be spent on growing and upgrading your fleet, or it can be reinvested into speeding up the growth of your colonies to further boost your income. But what happens to the money that isn't taxed? That stays in the private economy, which has its own screen. Money generated by all colonies after corruption is the private colony revenue, and you can see that the tax paid to you is deducted from this figure. But what are these ship maintenance, private fuel, and private ship building costs? Whether it's materials or people, a lot of stuff needs to be shifted around your empire. Unlike Stellaris, literally all things must be physically moved to where they're needed. This is where the private economy comes in. They will build ships to shift materials and people around, and they pay you to construct these ships for them. That money comes out of the private economy and into your state economy as annual bonus income. So the more you expand, the more materials and people that need shifting around. The more ships the private economy will pay you to construct for them. And probably most satisfying is when you research a new technology that the private sector wants all their ships to have, and they pay you to upgrade them all. That's a nice payday for the state economy. Please accept this as a watered-down summary of how the economy works, but the main thing you need to know is it is incredibly confusing at first, but equally satisfying once you work it out and tweak the percentage points to squeeze as much as possible out of the system, so you can build more and better warships. As you expand, you will run into independent pirates, which you can pay off and even persuade to join you if you like. There will be independent worlds who will likely be more than happy for you to colonize them, provided you give them enough money. And then there are other empires where diplomacy will be needed. Diplomacy is fine in distant worlds too, but it's also as bog standard as you can get, so we won't dwell on it here. There are all the options you would expect while negotiating, and being able to trade technology is pretty cool, but otherwise it's not a bad or good system, it's just fine. As your empire grows, you will have more and more characters to control, such as leaders, ambassadors, admirals, generals, scientists, and spies. Basically, you can assign them to a particular location, and they will provide various bonuses, as well as negative percentages to that location. Spies, however, are rather fun. You can assign them to a faction to steal technology and maps, or sabotage construction and destroy bases, or even incite revolution and assassinate other characters. If it comes to war, there's a whole lot of options. You win a war by accruing enough war score, obviously by blowing things up, but you also accrue war weariness over time, which reduces the happiness of your citizens, hitting your economy where it hurts. Fighting in space involves producing a huge number and variety of ships and grouping them into fleets. Although you can control each individual ship right to the last detail, part of the automation in Distant Worlds 2 pushes you towards grouping ships into fleets with a particular purpose, namely defending, attacking, invading, and raiding, then tweaking their role by automating their stance, their operating area, and when to retreat and upgrade themselves. Sensors and stealth technologies deserve a special mention, as you can equip ever more powerful sensors to your defensive ships and stations as an early warning system, which can be counteracted by researching and equipping stealth tech to your attacking fleets. Honestly, I can't even fit in half the details you have to play with in combat here. It's also worth touching on ship design because this area of the game is insanely detailed. If you enjoy designing ships, just buy the game now because it's got everything you could want. There is such detail, so many options, adding upgrades, balancing power consumption, swapping weapons for fuel tanks to increase range. My head hurts just thinking about it. But remember, all of this can be automated if you aren't interested. But what do you do once you've expanded your empire, made friends, and defeated some enemies? Mostly, you are chasing the victory based on the win conditions that you set up at the beginning. There is no endgame crisis in the game as such. There sort of is, but they don't even bother you half the time, so it's not like an endgame crisis in Stellaris. However, if you purchase the Return of the Shakhturi DLC, you are purchasing an endgame crisis. Just remember, that's a paid-for DLC. Although there are occasional pop-ups with text to provide some element of story during the game, that pales in comparison compared with the level and variety of story you get within a Stellaris playthrough. It's fun to roleplay the expansion of your colony, as there's much more a sense of scale in this game, but there's less of a focus on scripted story events in Distant Worlds 2. Now you have an idea of the big picture for Distant Worlds 2, here's a quick-fire list of minor but notable features that might interest you. You can actually board and capture enemy ships, you just need the right tech equipped in order to do it. You can order your ships to blockade a planet, for all you Star Wars Phantom Menace fans out there. You can construct buildings on your planets which yield a variety of bonuses, but this is nowhere near as in-depth as in Stellaris. You can crash research a project by paying money, which doubles the research speed. Eventually, you can construct resorts, which will attract tourists. Attracting tourists from within and outside of your empire will generate money, and the private economy will pay you to construct ships to ferry the tourists around. There are no lanes between stars that restrict how you can travel around the galaxy. You can go wherever you like, but a ship that runs out of fuel will take a long time to get there. You can control individual ships right down to the last detail. This can be incredibly immersive if you personally control a particular exploration ship and do your thing while the rest of your empire is automated and living around you. Also, huge battles are fought between all ships individually. They're not grouped into one big stat box. You can zoom in all the way up close to a planet and zoom all the way out to see the whole galaxy in one seamless scroll. Although your mouse wheel finger will start to hurt and you'll want to use shortcuts to skip between zoom levels, the sense of scale in this game is rather incredible. A decent soundtrack is particularly important for a game that's designed to absorb you for hours on end. Unfortunately, I found the soundtrack to Distant Worlds 2 lacking in this department, with an understated and at times frankly odd-sounding score. I must confess, I ended up listening to the Stellaris soundtrack while playing Distant Worlds 2, but this is what the game sounds like, so you can decide what you think of it for yourself. Hopefully by now you have an idea of what it's like to actually play Distant Worlds 2, so let's address some other, more practical considerations that might affect your purchasing decision. Distant Worlds 2 does take a very long time to learn due to the sheer number of mechanics and balancing acts required to grow a successful empire. However, the full automation means anyone can pick up the game. Look at the in-game text tutorials, then pick and choose exactly which areas they would like to play, allowing you to scale the vast learning curve in your own time. Distant Worlds 2, like any other 4X empire building game, is designed to be played for long periods of time. However, I did find myself playing for 30 minutes at a time occasionally and found it easy enough to pick up from where I left off, mostly due to the automation settings. Distant Worlds 2 does not have any form of multiplayer mode at all. It is a solitary experience. As the game released a few years ago, you can easily pick up the base game with a 50% discount. The game is on sale so regularly on Steam that there really is no reason to pay more than 50% of the total cost. At the time of making this video, there are 3 paid-for DLCs for Distant Worlds 2. 2 of these DLCs simply add more factions to the game and have been well rated by players. However, the newer Return of the Shakhturi DLC introduces several new features, such as a challenging endgame crisis, new alliance systems with groups of empires, and a new starting setup as a refugee fleet without a planet, akin to Battlestar Galactica. This well-rated DLC is a must-have for any fans of the base game. So with all that said, is Distant Worlds 2 right for you today? As always, it depends who you are. For fans of previous Distant World games, Distant Worlds 2 had a rocky start, but the developers have poured love into this game, to the point that several years after release, it is in a respectable place, even for those who have high standards based on previous installments of the franchise. There are differences between the two, both good and bad, which are outside the scope of this video, but I think we can safely say that fans of previous Distant World games will enjoy Distant Worlds 2. Broadly speaking, if you like Stellaris, you will like Distant Worlds 2. There are several differences. The key ones I hope I have conveyed already, but for me personally, it boils down to this. Stellaris has race customization and much more in the way of story. Distant Worlds 2 otherwise has way more detail and the ability to automate the game, which is particularly appreciated in the late game when your empire is big. But most of all, Stellaris is about resources, whereas Distant Worlds 2 is about logistics. If you are looking for immersion in space exploration more generally, then Distant Worlds 2 does tick many boxes. The zooming levels really show off the look and feel of the game with pretty graphics. If you want to focus down on particular ships or a particular colony, while the rest of the Empire and literally hundreds of other ships do their thing around you, that is not just possible, but very enjoyable in this game. If you're entirely new to 4X games, then the automation of Distant Worlds 2 enables you to discover what is otherwise an horrifically complex game in baby steps. But although my head says that a player that is new to 4X games should try Distant Worlds 2 first, my heart still says Stellaris. But that might just be because Stellaris is one of my favorite games. If you have any further questions, please feel free to ask, or if you already own the game and have some additional information you'd like to add, please let us all know in the comments below. If you found the video useful, please leave a like for the algorithm gods, and if you enjoy this style of review, consider subscribing for more content, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.